Oh, you don't like it? You don't smack them, and if they continue, just kill them. Because we're going to lose, right? I'm running the Raiders. I'm going to lose some of you. Because we got a long journey. I've captured you up here, and we got to go 600 miles before you're going to go and be so. So I'm going to lose some of you along the way. So I might as well start now knocking a few off to teach the lesson. And this is how it starts. These happy people in their villages thinking about what they're going to do next week, thinking about what they're going to have as dinner, all of a sudden see their world change instantly. And now you start the process of the march. You start the process of the march. Up here to the coast is about 350 miles. And right, we've taken the people from the village, and now it's going to be a march. They're chained, and they're marching. And along the way, you're going to have some of them dragging, some complaining their feet are hurting. Women may be on their periods complaining that they have problems. Well, you're not listening to complaints. Okay? So complaints get met with a slap, with a whip, whatever it's going to take. But you're not going to listen to complaints. And they walk. Okay, now the Raiders who own them are going to ride the horses, but they're going to walk. And the ones who are too slow, and you know, along the way, you do stop and you rest, and you go, well, here's the conversation, right? I, as one of the Raiders, am going to have with my other co-Raiders. He ain't going to make it. Look, he's slowing us down. You might as well just go, all right, then go ahead and kill him. Because there's no sense slowing him down. So he's dead. Okay, so that means I've lost 1, 2, 3 already. She's complaining. Well, look, why don't the 4 of you take her, rape her, and then bring her back? And if she's got something to say after that, we'll just get rid of her too. And this is the process as we take our 3 weeks to walk you down to the coast. This is going to be going on all along. Now, when you look at Ghana, all roads lead to Campecine, because Campecine was the center of the Ashanti Empire. And the Ashantis were the biggest slaving African group. So all the slaves had to come through Campecine. So you got to first march them through Campecine, where they're going to be taxed by the Ashanti king and queen for money. So you bring them through there, and you pay your tax. And now you continue to march. So they're still in the hands of the people who captured them. Now, some of them may be sold. Some of them may be sold. Of course, we're assuming this group isn't. But if you're sold, right, imagine what happens when you sell a slave to someone else. A new round of beatings begins, right? Because now you got a new owner, and the new owner's got to make sure you know that they are as mean and as wicked and as nasty as your old owners. But let's assume you weren't sold. You finally get down to the coast. When you get to the coast, all the slaves had to be sold to the blacks at the coast called the Fonte. So the Fonte would buy you. And there's clearly going to be another round of beatings. So see him, see this? Oh, we're not going to take that. Okay, so we send him out with 4 guys who just going to work him over. In fact, they're going to work him over in front of everybody else. Because the whole point about this, right, is to send a message. And the message is you are now property. And not only are you property, you're my property. And in fact, I got to lose some of you, right, because that's just the way it is. And if I victimize him, the rest of them get the message. It is not good to be a good-looking woman once you've been captured as a slave. Indeed, it's not good to be a good-looking guy once you've been captured as a slave. There are stories of African tribes that would put these blocks in the lips of the women, and by the time they were done, literally, the women's lips would be out to here, because the goal was to make them so ugly that none of the other slavers would want them. But anyway, you're sold and beaten to the Fonte. Now, the Fonte, after they've had their way with you, take you to the European castles. And at this point, you're sold again. And you're sold to the Europeans. And the Europeans are doing the same thing. So they had a little, only for them, the torture was going to last a little longer. Because you effectively, once you got into the castles, you stayed in dungeons until the next ship came that was going to take you to the West Indies or to America. That meant they had a little more time to do their torturing, do their beating, do their weeding out process, right? And right, you understand, right? You're Europeans, you're selling slaves. Okay, let's say you sold some slaves, they got on the boat, or they got to the West Indies, or they got to America, and they caused trouble, they tried to rebel. So that comes back to you. Right, here's the ship owner of the slave that's going to transport your slaves, go, you know, last group of slaves you sold me, they tried to rebel. Oh, really? Yeah, and I got to have some money back. So, you know, as they pay the money, because they got to compensate him for his loss, they're going, well, we got to make sure this next group of slaves we send get told better. So they're going to get beaten a little more. The women are going to get raped a little more. You know, you go to this castle, and part of it's kind of surreal, because the church would sit on top of the place where they were holding slaves. So the slaves would literally be physically under the church. And of course, after you were beaten or raped, the Europeans would go to the church and they'd pray for forgiveness, and all would be forgiven. Okay. After this, you now get sold. And now you're going to be placed on the boats. Now understand what has happened to this point, right? Our little happy villagers up here have seen, by the time we get to this point, half of the people who were captured with them brutally killed. Brutally killed. Half the people were brutally killed. And you've been beaten a few times and raped a few times. You've been stuck in these dungeons. And some of those dungeons, actually the dungeon was no bigger than this room. So imagine 600 people in this room with no toilet. No. If you had to use it, you use it right there on the floor. They actually said when they went to clean out these pens that the feces was this high and had hardened that much on the floors. So after being in these pens for 30 days, right, you can imagine what the smell was like. And if somebody got sick, they're just throwing up over everybody else who's there. Now after that, here's the cruel part of it. They chain them up, they bring them out of the dungeons, and they're taking them to the boats. So this is the first time for a lot of them in 30 days, fresh air. They actually get to breathe fresh air, feel the wind on their face for the first time in 30 days. And then they get in these boats, and what they do is, you know, they chain them to the floor. Okay, so one head is facing this way, the other one's head is facing that way, and that's the way they go. But they're chained so tight, they can't even turn over. Okay, once again, you got to use the bathroom, you use it there. Everybody's going to smell it. Somebody gets sick, right? You know, and unfortunately you're dead, so but let's say the person next to you gets sick.